I sat at the long mahogany dining table, the same one we had used for every Sunday brunch for 23 years. Sunlight slanted through the tall windows and caught the silver coffee pot. Steam rose in slow curls. Vanessa smiled across from me, her lips painted the color of expensive wine. She wore the cream silk blouse I had paid for last Christmas. "Mom," she said, voice soft as if she were explaining something to a child. "We already moved everything into the new trust yesterday. Only the important people were at the signing." The cup in my hand stopped halfway to my lips. The porcelain felt suddenly heavy. Marcus leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, nodding like a man who had just closed a brilliant deal. Derek, my son-in-law, didn't even look up from his phone. He simply tapped once, sending something into the ether. I set the cup down without drinking. "Everything," I repeated. The word came out flat. Vanessa slid a thick manila envelope across the polished wood. It stopped right in front of my plate. "It's all taken care of, Mom. You don't have to worry about a single thing anymore. The house, the investments, the pension deposits, everything is safe now. Protected." I stared at the envelope. My name was typed neatly on the label. Eleanor Margaret Voss. No middle initial. They had never bothered to learn it. Marcus cleared his throat. "We used the best firm in Boston. Cost us a pretty penny, but worth it. You're 70 next year. Better to have professionals handle it." I picked up the envelope. The paper was thick, expensive stock. My fingers left faint prints on the surface. I opened the flap slowly. Inside lay the trust document, 37 pages. I flipped to the signature page. There it was. My name. My signature. Except I had never seen this document before, never sat in any office, never met any attorney they claimed to have hired. The numbers stared back at me in clean black ink. $4.7 million in liquid assets. The colonial house, valued at $2.1 million. Monthly pension deposits of $18,400 redirected into the new trust account. Even the small annuity from Richard's life insurance, $940 a month, now funneled through their names. I read the clause at the bottom. "Grantor hereby transfers all rights of trusteeship to Vanessa Voss Klein and Marcus Richard Voss, jointly and severally." My own forged signature sat beneath it, dated yesterday. I closed the folder. The soft thud echoed in the quiet room. Vanessa reached over and patted my hand. Her touch was cool. "See? All done. You can relax now. We'll handle the bills. You'll get a generous allowance, $5,000 a month, more than enough for someone your age." Derek finally looked up. His smile was thin. "Smart money management, Eleanor. You taught us that." I looked at each of them in turn. Vanessa's perfectly arched brows, Marcus's slight smirk, Derek's bored confidence. None of them flinched. I folded my hands in my lap. "You did this yesterday." "Yes," Vanessa said brightly. "While you were at your garden club, we didn't want to trouble you with the details." Marcus stood up. "I'll have the movers come next week. We found a lovely assisted living place in Lexington. Private suite. They even have bridge on Tuesdays." I said nothing. The silence stretched. For the first time that morning, something shifted in Vanessa's eyes. A flicker of uncertainty. I picked up the envelope again. I slid it back toward her, untouched except for my fingerprints. Then I spoke, voice low and even. "I see." That was all. Vanessa laughed, a short, nervous sound. "Mom, don't be dramatic. It's for your own good." I stood up slowly. My knees didn't tremble. I walked to the sideboard, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and returned to my seat. The liquid was black and bitter. I drank it in one slow sip. Marcus shifted in his chair. "Look, if you're upset about the signature..." I set the cup down. The porcelain clicked against the saucer. "Upset," I said. The word tasted like metal. Derek rolled his eyes. "Here we go." I looked straight at him. You forged my name on legal documents. You redirected every dollar I have spent 42 years protecting. You did it while I was choosing flowers for a charity luncheon. And now you sit here and tell me it's for my own good." Vanessa's smile faltered. "Mom, the doctor said—" "What doctor?" I asked quietly. She hesitated. Marcus jumped in. "Dr. Harlan. He signed the capacity assessment last month." I tilted my head. "Last month I had my annual physical with Dr. Ellison. He said my mind is sharper than most 40-year-olds he sees." Derek snorted. "Paperwork gets mixed up sometimes." I nodded once. "Yes, it does." I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and pulled out a small notebook, leather-bound, the one Richard gave me on our 30th anniversary. I opened it to a page I had marked years ago. I read aloud, voice steady. "Any attempt to transfer assets without the explicit written consent of the primary trustee, witnessed and notarized in my presence, shall trigger an immediate full forensic audit by the firm of Whitaker and Associates, with all costs borne by the attempting parties." I closed the notebook. Vanessa blinked. "What is that?" "Page 17 of the revocable trust I executed in 2019, I said. "The one none of you ever asked to see." Marcus laughed, but the sound was hollow. "Mom, that's old. We have new documents now." I stood up again. This time I walked to the window and looked out at the garden. The hydrangeas were just beginning to bloom. Richard had planted them the year before he died. I turned back to face them. "You moved $4.7 million. You listed my house for sale without my knowledge. You redirected my pension. You forged my signature." I paused. The next sentence came out even quieter. "And you did it all on a Sunday." Derek pushed his chair back. "This is ridiculous. We're trying to protect you." I looked at him for a long moment. "Protect me from what, Derek? From having money I earned?" Vanessa stood too. "Mom, please, let's not make this ugly." I walked back to the table. I picked up the envelope they had given me. I held it out to Vanessa. "Take it," I said. She reached for it, relief flashing across her face. I pulled it back an inch. "And when the audit letter arrives from Whitaker and Associates tomorrow morning," I continued, "remember this moment. Remember that I gave you one chance to put everything back exactly as it was. Wire transfers, deeds, everything, by noon." Marcus's smirk disappeared. I placed the envelope in Vanessa's hands. She clutched it like a shield. I walked past them toward the hallway. At the doorway, I stopped. "Oh," I said, without turning around. "The garden club ran late yesterday. I was home by 11. I saw the three of you leave the house at 10:40. I watched from the upstairs window." I continued down the hall. Behind me, chairs scraped against the hardwood. I reached the study and closed the door softly. I sat at Richard's old desk. The leather chair creaked. I opened the bottom drawer and took out the thick file I had kept there for 7 years. On the front, in my neat handwriting, it read, "Contingency, Children." I opened the first page. Bank statements, wire records, email chains, copies of every document I had ever signed. And at the very top, a single sticky note I had written the day Richard died. "If they ever try, let the paperwork speak." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I picked up the phone and dialed a number I had memorized long ago. "Whitaker and Associates?" a crisp voice answered. "How may I direct your call?" I spoke clearly. "This is Eleanor Voss. Please tell Mr. Whitaker the contingency file is now active." I hung up. Outside the study door, I heard muffled voices. Vanessa's tone had risen. Marcus was pacing. I leaned back in the chair. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. I closed my eyes for just a second. When I opened them again, the weight in my chest had not lifted, but something else had settled in its place. Cold, clear, unshakable. I opened the file to the second page. It listed every unauthorized withdrawal Marcus had made over the past 4 years. Small at first, then larger. $12,500 here, $28,000 there, all labeled as family support. I ran my finger down the column of numbers. Tomorrow the bank would receive the audit request. Tomorrow the first domino would fall. I closed the file, and in the quiet of the study, I allowed myself one small, silent thought. They had no idea what they had just started. The envelope they left on the dining table still sat there when I walked back through the house an hour later. I picked it up one last time. Inside, my forged signature stared back at me like a stranger's lie. I carried the envelope to the shredder in the corner of the kitchen. I fed it in slowly. The machine growled. Pieces of paper rained down like snow. I watched them fall. Then I whispered to the empty room. Perfect. The study door clicked shut behind me, but the silence inside felt heavier than any argument. I sat at Richard's desk again, the same chair that still carried the faint scent of his pipe tobacco, even after 6 years. The leather was worn smooth where his elbows had rested. I ran my fingers over the edge, then opened the contingency file once more. Page after page of numbers stared back at me, not angry numbers, just facts. Cold, patient facts I had recorded every quarter for 15 years. $4.7 million total. $2.1 million in the house alone. $18,400 pension deposit hitting the old joint account on the first of every month, and $340,000 in small transfers Marcus had taken since Richard's funeral, each one labeled "Emergency Help for Mom" in the memo line, when it was really for his failed app launches. I turned the pages slowly. My breathing stayed even, no tears. I had used those up the first month after Richard died, crying alone in this very room while the children argued downstairs about who would get his watch collection. Tonight the house felt different. The walls seemed to lean in, listening. I heard the front door open at 9:17 p.m. Marcus's voice carried down the hall. "Mom, you still up?" Footsteps, heavy. He never learned to walk softly. He pushed the study door open without knocking. His tie was loosened, hair slightly damp from the rain that had started an hour ago. "Hey," he said, trying for casual. "Vanessa told me you seemed off after brunch. Just wanted to check on you." I didn't look up from the ledger. "Did she?" He stepped inside and closed the door. "Look, I know the trust thing felt sudden, but we only did it because we love you. Dad would have wanted us to protect the family money." I turned another page. The paper made a soft rustle. "Family money," I repeated. Marcus dropped into the armchair across from me, the one Richard used to read the newspaper in. "Exactly. You've carried everything long enough. Time to let us take the wheel." I finally met his eyes. "You listed the house for sale this afternoon. The listing went live at 2:43 p.m. I saw the email alert." He blinked. "How did you—" "I still own the email account attached to the property records," I said. "The one you never asked me to transfer." Marcus shifted. "It's just a precaution. If you decide to move to Lexington, we want top dollar. Market's hot right now." I closed the ledger. The sound was soft, but final. Marcus. In 2018, I added a clause. Any attempt to sell or encumber this house without my live, notarized consent automatically triggers a title audit and freezes all related accounts for 90 days. He laughed once, short and uneasy. "Mom, that's ancient paperwork. Our attorney said it's superseded." I stood up, walked to the tall filing cabinet in the corner. I pulled out a single sheet, protected in a clear sleeve. I placed it in front of him. Original Revocable Trust, executed March 12, 2019. Notarized. Witnessed by 2 partners from Whitaker and Associates. Clause 14B highlighted in yellow. Any unauthorized transfer or listing for sale shall render the new trust null and void and revert all assets to the original grantor's sole control pending full audit. Marcus stared at the paper. His finger traced the yellow line. "That can't be right," he muttered. I sat back down. "It is right. I paid the firm $18,000 to make sure it was bulletproof. You paid your firm whatever they charged to ignore it." He looked up. For the first time tonight, real anger flickered in his eyes. "You're really going to fight us on this? After everything we've done for you?" I tilted my head. "What exactly have you done for me, Marcus?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "We check on you every week. Vanessa brings groceries. I fix the Wi-Fi when it goes out." I nodded slowly. "And the $340,000 you moved out of the investment account since 2021? That was also for me?" His face went still. I continued, voice low. $12,500 in March 2022. Memo. Mom's medical. I hadn't seen a doctor that month. $28,000 in October 2023. Memo. Family support. You bought the new Tesla with that one. Marcus stood up fast. The chair legs scraped. "Those were loans. I was going to pay them back once the startup hit." I remained seated. "Loans require paperwork. You never asked me to sign any." He ran a hand through his hair. "This is insane. You're acting like we're criminals." I looked at him for a long moment. The boy who used to fall asleep on my lap while I balanced the checkbook. The man who now couldn't meet my eyes. "Tomorrow morning," I said quietly, "Whitaker & Associates will file the audit request with the bank. By 10 a.m., every account you touched will be frozen, including the one you tried to wire $340,000 from this afternoon." His mouth opened. No sound came out at first. I continued. "The bank compliance officer is very thorough. She already has the flagged transactions. I sent them last week when I first noticed the pattern." Marcus took one step back. His shoulder hit the doorframe. You set this up?" I folded my hands. "I prepared. There's a difference." He stared at me like I had grown another head. "Mom, please. We can fix this. Just sign the new papers. We'll make it right." I stood up slowly, walked around the desk until I was only 2 feet from him. "Make it right by noon tomorrow," I said. "Wire every dollar back. Pull the house listing. Tear up the trust. Or the audit begins and the numbers will speak for themselves." He swallowed hard. "You'd really do that to your own son?" I looked past him at the framed photo on the wall. Richard and me on our 40th anniversary. We looked tired but content. The children weren't in the picture. They had been too busy that weekend. "I did a lot for my own son," I said, "including staying quiet while he stole from me." Marcus's face twisted. "This isn't stealing. It's family." I stepped closer. My voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Family doesn't forge signatures on a Sunday morning while I'm choosing flowers." He backed up until his hand found the doorknob. I watched him fumble with it. At the threshold, he turned one last time. "You'll regret this. When you're old and alone, you'll wish you had let us help." I didn't answer. He left. The front door slammed a minute later. I walked back to the desk, sat down, opened the ledger to a fresh page. I wrote today's date, then the time, 9:47 p.m., then one line, "Marcus informed, warning delivered." Clock started. I closed the book. The rain tapped against the window now, steady and cold. I turned off the desk lamp. The room fell into soft darkness except for the small green glow of the digital clock on the shelf. 2:14 a.m. would be when the first automated alert hit their phones. The bank's fraud detection system never slept. I stood at the window and looked out at the dark garden. The hydrangeas would be heavy with rain by morning. I thought about the $4.7 million. Not with greed, just with the quiet knowledge that every dollar had been earned by me and Richard, one careful investment at a time. They had tried to take it while I was still breathing. I whispered to the glass, "Let the paperwork speak." Then I turned and walked upstairs to bed. Sleep came slowly, but it came. At 7:12 a.m. the next morning, my phone buzzed once on the nightstand. A text from Marcus. "We need to talk. Now." I read it once, deleted it. I got up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with the contingency file open. The second page showed the exact clause they had triggered. Any unauthorized transfer over $100,000 triggers mandatory reporting to the Massachusetts Elder Financial Protection Unit. Marcus had tried to move $340,000 yesterday afternoon. The universe hadn't sent lightning. It had simply waited for him to press send. I sipped my coffee, black, no sugar. The phone buzzed again. Vanessa this time. "Mom, the bank just called. What is going on?" I set the cup down. The clock on the microwave read 8:03 a.m. I opened a new blank page in the ledger. Part 2, I wrote at the top. Then I began listing the next set of numbers they would discover before lunch. By the time the sun broke through the clouds, the first real domino was already falling. And I sat there, pen steady, watching it happen. I never raised my voice. I never had to. The numbers were doing the job for me. I sat alone at the kitchen table the next morning, the contingency file open beside my second cup of coffee. The clock on the microwave read 6:47 a.m. My phone had buzzed 4 times already. I left it face down. At 7 sharp, I picked up the keys to the old Volvo and drove downtown through streets still wet from last night's rain. Whitaker and Associates occupied the 16th floor of a glass building near the Common. Mr. Whitaker himself met me in the small conference room. No receptionist, no waiting. He was 72, same as me, and he still wore the same wire-rimmed glasses he had in 2019. "Eleanor," he said, shaking my hand once. "I hoped I'd never see you in this chair." I placed the thick envelope from yesterday's brunch on the table. They forged it. All of it. He opened the document without comment. His eyes moved across the pages like a scanner. He stopped at the signature. "Sloppy work," he muttered. "They used the wrong notary stamp. I can smell it from here." I sat perfectly still. "They want me in assisted living by next month. They have brochures." Whitaker closed the folder. "And you want?" I looked straight at him. "I want the original trust enforced. Every clause, every dollar returned. And I want them to feel the weight of what they tried to do." He nodded once. "We'll file the audit notice at 9. But first, let's make sure you're bulletproof on incapacity. They're already shopping for a doctor who will sign whatever they put in front of him." I reached into my bag and pulled out the 2019 trust packet, the one with the yellow tabs I had placed myself. Whitaker flipped to Clause 14C. He read it aloud, voice low and precise. "The grantor shall remain sole trustee unless 2 independent physicians, each board certified in geriatric psychiatry, jointly certify in writing that the grantor lacks capacity, and said certification must be delivered to the original law firm of Whitaker and Associates at least 30 days prior to any action." He looked up. "They missed this." I allowed the smallest nod. "They always miss the details." We spent 43 minutes reviewing every addendum. By the time I left the building at 8:51 a.m., the audit request was already timestamped in the bank's secure portal. I drove home through the same quiet streets. The hydrangeas in my garden were dripping. I parked in the driveway and walked inside without turning on any lights. At 10:17 a.m., the doorbell rang. Vanessa and Derek stood on the porch. She carried a slim leather portfolio. He carried nothing but an expression of practiced patience. "Mom," Vanessa said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk, as a family." I closed the door behind them. "Marcus isn't here." He's on a call, Derek said. Important investor meeting. He'll join by video if needed. We moved to the living room, the same room where Richard and I had opened Christmas presents with the children for decades. I sat in the wingback chair by the fireplace. They took the sofa opposite me. Vanessa opened the portfolio. She laid 3 glossy brochures on the coffee table between us. "Lexington Senior Residence," she said softly. "Private wing. They have a waiting list, but Derek pulled strings. You'd have your own kitchenette, a garden view, and round-the-clock staff." I looked at the top brochure. Smiling, silver-haired women in cashmere cardigans. The monthly fee printed in small type at the bottom, $14,800. Derek leaned forward. "It's not cheap, but we can cover it from the trust. You won't have to worry about a thing." I said nothing. Vanessa slid a 4th document across the table, pre-filled. Mental incompetence petition. The first line already had my name typed in. The second line had Dr. Harlan's name listed as the examining physician. "We're not rushing this," she continued, "but the trust requires someone competent at the helm. You've been forgetting things lately. The house keys, the alarm code. We're just trying to protect you." I picked up the petition. I read the first paragraph, then the second. My eyes stopped on the signature block at the bottom. My name was already printed there too, with a blank line waiting for my actual signature. I set it down. "You want me declared incompetent?" I said. The words were flat. Derek sighed. "It's a formality. Once it's done, the trust operates smoothly. No more audits, no more drama." I folded my hands in my lap. "I met with my attorney this morning." Vanessa's smile tightened. "Your attorney?" "Mom, we have the best firm, Whitaker and Associates," I said quietly. Derek's left eyebrow twitched, just once. Vanessa recovered first. "That old man? He's practically retired." I looked at her. "He still remembers Clause 14C. Silence dropped over the room like a heavy curtain. I continued, voice never rising. "The 2019 trust is very clear. 2 independent physicians, 30-day notice, delivered to Whitaker in person. You have none of that." Derek laughed once, short and sharp. "This is getting ridiculous. We're your children." "We have power of attorney." "You had a temporary one," I corrected. "It expired in 2022. You never renewed it. I have the letter from the bank confirming that." Vanessa's hands trembled slightly as she gathered the brochures. "Mom, please. We're doing this because we love you." I stood up, walked to the side table where the landline still sat. I pressed speakerphone and dialed a number from memory. The line clicked. "Whitaker and Associates?" The same crisp voice from yesterday answered. I spoke clearly. "This is Eleanor Voss. Please confirm receipt of the incapacity protection notice I delivered at 7:42 a.m. this morning." A pause. Then, "Confirmed, Mrs. Voss. Original 2019 trust remains fully enforceable. No third-party trustee may act without the dual physician certification on file." I hung up. Vanessa stared at the phone as if it had bitten her. Derek's face had gone pale under the tan. "You're making a mistake, a very expensive mistake." I remained standing. "The only mistake was assuming I would stay quiet while you erased me." Vanessa stood too. Her voice cracked for the first time. "We're your family. This house, that money, it belongs to all of us." I looked at her for a long moment. The daughter who once called me every night after college. The woman who now saw me only as a balance sheet. "No," I said. "It belongs to me. Richard and I built it, dollar by dollar. You spent it." Derek stepped closer. "Sign the petition, Eleanor. Make this easy." I met his eyes. Easy would have been asking me first. I walked to the front door and opened it. Cold air rushed in from the porch. Vanessa clutched the portfolio to her chest. "We'll see you in court then." I nodded once. "You will." They left. The door closed with a soft click. I returned to the living room. The brochures still lay on the coffee table like discarded promises. I gathered them, carried them to the kitchen shredder, and fed them in one by one. The machine hummed. I poured myself a glass of water, drank it slowly, then I walked back to the study, sat at the desk, and opened the contingency file to a fresh page. I wrote the time, 11:09 a.m., then the date, then 3 lines. Family meeting concluded. Petition presented and refused. Clause 14C invoked. I closed the file. Outside, the rain had started again, light, steady. My phone buzzed on the desk, a text from an unknown number, probably Derek's attorney. I deleted it without reading. At 1:47 p.m., the doorbell rang again. This time it was a courier in a dark uniform. He handed me a thick envelope marked Whitaker and Associates, urgent. I signed for it, closed the door, sat on the bottom step of the staircase and opened the flap. Inside lay a single document, the original notarized revocable trust from 2019. My copy had been in the safe, but this one carried fresh stamps. Mr. Whitaker had added a cover letter. It read simply, Mrs. Voss, the incapacity protections are now formally activated. Any petition filed without the required dual certification will be dismissed within 48 hours. We are ready when you are. I read the last line twice. Then I carried the document upstairs to the bedroom safe and placed it inside next to the original. I locked the safe. The key felt cool in my palm. Downstairs, the house was empty again. No voices, no footsteps. I stood at the top of the stairs and looked down at the living room where they had tried to bury me alive with brochures and lies. I whispered to the quiet air. They overlooked the one page that mattered. I walked back down, picked up the contingency file, and turned to the next blank page. The numbers were already lining up. The bank audit would hit their inboxes by close of business today. The title company would receive the freeze notice tomorrow. I sat at the kitchen table and began writing the next set of figures they would discover before dinner. $2.1 million house, still in my name, still protected. I capped the pen. The clock on the wall ticked past 3 p.m. I allowed myself one slow breath. Then I spoke to the empty room, voice low and perfectly calm. Perfect. I was still sitting at the kitchen table when the front door slammed open at 4:12 p.m. Heavy footsteps crossed the foyer. Marcus didn't knock. He never did anymore. "Mom!" His voice cracked against the walls. "What the hell did you do?" I didn't stand up. I simply reached for the kettle, filled it at the sink, and set it on the stove. The blue flame clicked to life beneath the copper bottom. I turned slowly. Marcus stood in the doorway, rain still dripping from his coat. His face was flushed, eyes wide. The same look he used to give me at 16 when the car insurance bill arrived. "The bank froze the wire," he said, stepping closer. $340,000. Gone. They said it's under review. What did you tell them? I took 2 mugs from the cabinet, white porcelain. One had a tiny chip on the handle from the year Vanessa dropped it during her senior year. I set them on the counter. "Tea?" I asked. He stared at me. "Tea? Are you serious right now?" The kettle began its low hiss. I opened the tin of loose leaves Richard had bought in London in 2017. Darjeeling. I measured exactly 2 teaspoons into the pot. Marcus slammed his phone onto the table. The screen lit up with a notification from the bank. Account access restricted. Potential elder financial exploitation flagged. Please contact compliance immediately. I poured the boiling water over the leaves. Steam rose in a perfect column. "Sit down, Marcus." He didn't sit. He paced. "I needed that money today. The startup round closes at 5. Investors are waiting. You just cost me everything." I carried the teapot and mugs to the table. I poured his first, then mine. The liquid was amber and clear. I pushed his mug toward him. 340,000, I said quietly. The exact amount you tried to move yesterday afternoon, the one you labeled family support. He stopped pacing. It is family support. I'm your son. I opened the contingency file that still lay on the table from this morning. I slid the top statement across to him. 15 years of records, every transfer highlighted in my neat yellow marker. March 2022, $12,500. October 2023, $28,000. January 2024, $19,700. And on and on. 17 separate withdrawals, all from the joint investment account, all under $50,000, so the bank's automatic flags stayed quiet. Marcus looked at the page. His finger traced one line. These were loans. I sipped my tea. It was hot. Perfect. Loans require a note, a signature, a repayment schedule. You never ask for any of those. He shoved the paper away. It slid halfway off the table. You're twisting this. Dad left that money for all of us. I set my mug down without a sound. Your father left it to me. I managed it. I never touched a penny for myself after he died. Not one. He leaned across the table, close enough that I could smell the coffee on his breath from whatever frantic meeting he had just left. Sign the damn papers, Mom. Release the funds. This is humiliating. I looked at him, not with anger, just the same steady gaze I had given him when he was 7 and lied about breaking the garage window. I already signed the only papers that matter, I said, the ones in 2019. The phone on the table buzzed. Not his cell, the landline. The one still listed on every bank record. I picked it up on the second ring and pressed speaker. Mrs. Eleanor Voss? A woman's voice, professional and calm. This is Lydia Chen from Massachusetts Bank Compliance. Marcus froze. I answered evenly. Yes, this is Eleanor. We received your audit request this morning. We've placed a temporary hold on all accounts linked to the Voss family trust. Specifically, we are investigating 17 suspicious transfers totaling $340,000 over the past 4 years. Marcus's face drained of color. Ms. Chen continued. Standard procedure requires us to file a suspicious activity report with the federal authorities. Elder financial abuse protocols have been activated. Mr. Marcus Voss is listed as the originator on each transfer. We will need to speak with him directly. Marcus reached for the phone. His hand shook. I held it steady. He's here now, I said. I placed the receiver on the table between us. Ms. Chen's voice filled the kitchen. Mr. Voss, are you on the line? He swallowed hard. Yes. We have questions regarding the memo lines on these wires. Mom's medical, family support, emergency home repair. Our records show Mrs. Voss had no medical claims during those periods. No repairs were filed with the property insurance. Can you explain the purpose of these transfers? Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out at first. Then, it was family money. I was helping her. Understood, Ms. Chen said. Her tone never changed. However, Mrs. Voss's affidavit states she had no knowledge of these withdrawals. We will be forwarding the full file to the Elder Financial Exploitation Unit at the Department of Justice. You may wish to retain counsel. The line clicked once, then silence. Marcus stared at the phone as if it had just pronounced sentence. I picked up my tea again. The mug was still warm. I took a slow sip. He looked at me, eyes wide now, not angry, scared. Mom, you reported me. I met his gaze. I reported the numbers, Marcus, the numbers you created. He sank into the chair across from me. For the first time in years, he looked small. The rain outside had picked up again, drumming against the kitchen window. I slid the next bank statement toward him. This one showed the attempted $340,000 wire from yesterday. frozen at 3:58 p.m. with a red stamp across the top. "Federal scrutiny," I said quietly. "Those were your exact words yesterday when you told Vanessa it was just paperwork." He didn't touch the paper. His hands stayed flat on the table. I stood up, walked to the counter. I rinsed my mug and set it in the drying rack. Every movement deliberate, no rush. When I turned back, Marcus was still staring at the statements. I spoke from the sink. "The compliance officer will call you again within the hour. They always follow up the same day. I suggest you answer truthfully." He looked up at me. "You're really going to let them do this?" I dried my hands on the dish towel, folded it once, placed it back on the hook. "I didn't let them do anything," I said. "You did." The landline buzzed again. Same number, Lydia Chen, returning. Marcus stared at it. The phone vibrated against the wooden table. I didn't move to answer it this time. He reached out slowly. His finger hovered above the speaker button. The ringing filled the kitchen like a metronome. I watched him, calm, unmoving. He pressed the button. The compliance officer's voice returned, crisp and inevitable. "Mr. Voss, we have additional questions regarding the pattern of activity. Please hold while I connect you to our senior investigator." Marcus closed his eyes. I turned and walked out of the kitchen without another word. Behind me, the voice on the phone began listing account numbers and dates. I stopped at the doorway for just a second. I whispered to the empty hallway. Perfect. The rain kept falling outside, steady and cold, washing nothing away. But the numbers had started their work, and they never stopped once they began. The rain had eased by evening, leaving the driveway glistening under the porch light. I was wiping down the kitchen counter when the doorbell rang at 6:38 p.m. 2 sharp notes. Not Marcus this time. I knew the rhythm. I opened the door. Derek stood there in a charcoal suit, briefcase in one hand. Beside him was a man I had never seen. Mid-50s, wire-rimmed glasses, navy tie clipped with a small silver bar. The attorney. "Eleanor," Derek said, voice smooth as polished stone. "We need 20 minutes. No drama. Just business." I stepped aside. They walked in without waiting for an invitation. The attorney's shoes left faint wet prints on the hardwood. I closed the door behind them and led the way to the dining room, the same table where it had all begun 3 days ago. The silver coffee pot was gone. In its place sat the contingency file, closed but ready. Derek didn't sit. He placed his briefcase on the table and snapped it open. He removed a single sheet and slid it toward me. $2.1 million, he said. "Cash offer for the house. Market value. No haggling. We close in 14 days. You sign today, we wire the money to an account in your name. Simple." I looked at the offer. Clean letterhead from a firm I didn't recognize. Purchase price, $2,100,000. Closing date, April 20th. Earnest money already wired, $105,000, held in escrow. I left the paper where it lay. Derek's attorney cleared his throat. "Mrs. Voss, my client is being more than generous. Given the current complications with the trust, this removes all uncertainty. You walk away with liquidity. No assisted living battles, no audits hanging over your head." I met the attorney's eyes. "Generous?" Derek smiled, thin and confident. "Exactly. Vanessa and Marcus agree. We keep the family intact. You get freedom. We get the house we've always loved." I walked to the sideboard, poured myself a glass of water from the pitcher. The ice cubes clinked once. I drank half, set the glass down, and returned to the table. I opened the contingency file. Not the bank statements this time, a different folder, thicker. 14 years of canceled checks, each one encased in plastic sleeves. I had labeled them myself year by year in black ink. I placed the folder in front of the attorney. "Before we discuss freedom," I said quietly, "let's discuss gifts." Derek laughed once, short. Eleanor, this isn't the time for old receipts. I opened the folder to page 1. January 2011. Check number 4782, payable to Boston University. Amount $48,700. Tuition for Vanessa's final semester. Memo. Final payment, no repayment expected. The attorney flipped the page. I continued. March 2012. Check to Derek Klein, $125,000. Down payment on your first condo in Back Bay. Memo. Housewarming from Eleanor and Richard. Derek's smile faltered. I turned another page. August 2015. Check to Marcus Voss, $92,000. Seed capital for his first startup. Memo. Investment. No equity requested. Page after page. College, weddings, cars, vacations, renovations on the very house they now wanted to buy from me. Total transferred, I said, voice even. $1,840,000 over 14 years, all from my personal accounts, all documented as non-repayable gifts at the time. The attorney scanned faster now. His finger paused on a line from 2018. I watched him. These were gifts, Derek said. His tone had lost its polish. You said so yourself, right there in the memo line. I nodded once. I did. But gifts given in good faith can be reclassified if fraud is later proven. The attorney looked up sharply. I slid one more document across, a single page, a letter from the IRS dated last year outlining the statute of limitations on fraudulent conveyance claims in Massachusetts. 7 years, I said, for certain transfers. Not all of them are past the window. The 2020 wedding check to Vanessa and you, Derek, $68,000, still inside the limit. And the 2022 down payment assistance on Marcus's second condo, $140,000, also live. Derek leaned forward. You're threatening us with tax law now? I kept my hands flat on the table. No threats, just numbers. The same numbers you ignored when you forged my signature on Sunday. The attorney closed the folder slowly. His face had changed. The confident tilt of his head was gone. Color drained from his cheeks, leaving 2 faint red spots high on the bone. He looked at Derek. We may have a problem. Derek's laugh came out brittle. What problem? She gave us the money. It's done. The attorney tapped the folder. The memos say gifts, but if Mrs. Voss can demonstrate she was under undue influence or that the transfers were part of a pattern now being investigated for elder exploitation, the IRS and the state can claw them back, plus penalties, interest, and the house sale itself could be frozen pending review. Derek stared at him. You're my attorney. Fix this. The attorney didn't answer right away. He looked back at me. His voice was lower now. Mrs. Voss, is this your final position? I met his gaze. My position is simple. The house is not for sale. The trust is not changing. And every dollar listed in that folder stays exactly where it is, unless you 3 repay it with interest. 6%, compounded annually, from the original dates. Derek slammed the briefcase shut. This is insane. You're going to bankrupt your own children over paperwork. I stood up. The chair legs made no sound on the rug. Paperwork, I repeated. The same paperwork you called minor on Sunday. I walked to the front door and opened it. Cold evening air slipped in. The attorney gathered the folder. He held it like it might burn him. At the threshold, he stopped. Mrs. Voss, he said quietly, I will need to review these with my team. This changes the valuation of the buyout. I nodded once. Review quickly. The bank audit is already moving. Tomorrow's compliance call will reference these exact checks. Derek pushed past him onto the porch. His shoulders were rigid. You'll regret this, Eleanor. When you're sitting alone in this empty house with no one left, you'll remember who tried to help you. I looked at him for a long second. The man who had never once thanked me for the $125,000 down payment on his first home. No, I said. I won't. They stepped outside. I closed the door behind them without another word. I returned to the dining room. The buyout offer still lay on the table. I picked it up, carried it to the shredder in the kitchen, and fed it in. The machine growled once, then quieted. I opened the contingency file to a fresh page. Time, 7:14 p.m. Derek Klein and attorney presented $2.1 million buyout. Folder 14 delivered. Statute of limitations confirmed, live on $208,000 in transfers. I capped the pen. The house was silent again. The clock in the hallway ticked past 7:30. I walked upstairs to the bedroom safe, opened it, and added the attorney's business card I had taken from his pocket when he wasn't looking. I placed it beside the 2019 trust. I locked the safe. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and looked out at the dark garden. The hydrangeas were closed tight against the night. I allowed myself one slow breath. They had come to buy my life for $2.1 million. They had left carrying proof that they owed me far more. The phone on the nightstand stayed dark. No new messages yet. But tomorrow the attorney would read the fine print again. Tomorrow the numbers would tighten another notch. I whispered to the quiet room. Perfect. The scales were moving now. Not with anger, not with shouting, just with paper. And paper never forgot. I was folding the last dish towel when the front door flew open at 8:12 p.m. No knock, no hello, just the sharp click of heels across the foyer. Vanessa stormed into the kitchen, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with fury. Her black dress was the one I had paid for 2 months ago. The platinum card still dangled from her fingers like a broken toy. "Mom," she said, voice shaking. "My card was declined. At La Mer, in front of 8 clients. $9,400. Declined." I hung the towel on its hook. The fabric settled without a sound. She slammed the card onto the counter. They looked at me like I was some fraud. Derek had to cover it with his own Amex. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? I turned to face her. The kitchen light caught the single tear she refused to wipe away. Humiliating, I repeated. The word came out flat. She stepped closer. This is you, isn't it? You canceled the supplementary cards. You're punishing us after everything we've done to protect you. I picked up the card. It felt light in my hand. Gold edges, her name embossed beneath mine. I set it down again, exactly where she had thrown it. Months ago, I said quietly. November 17th. I noticed the patterns. Dinners over 7,000, jewelry charges in New York, a weekend at the Cape for 12,000, all on my accounts. I canceled the cards the next morning, quietly. No scene. Vanessa's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. You've been planning this? I walked to the table and sat down. The contingency file waited there, closed. I did not open it yet. Planning? I asked. No, preparing. There's a difference. She pulled out the chair opposite me, but did not sit. Her hands gripped the backrest so tightly the wood creaked. We're your family, she said. Tears spilled now, but her voice stayed sharp. We have bills, obligations. Marcus has investors breathing down his neck. Derek's fund is under review because of your stupid audit, and now I can't even buy dinner for clients who pay my commission checks. I folded my hands in my lap. $9,400 for one meal. That used to be my quarterly property tax payment. She laughed once, bitter. Oh, spare me the poor widow routine. You have millions. We were trying to keep it in the family. I looked at her. The same daughter who once cried on my shoulder the night her first marriage ended. the woman who now saw my silence as a weapon. "Family," I said. "You forged my name on Sunday. You tried to put me in assisted living on Monday. You sent your husband with a buyout offer on Tuesday. And tonight you cry because your platinum card no longer works." Vanessa wiped her face with the back of her hand. "We were protecting you. You're 70. You don't understand modern money." I stood up slowly, walked to the drawer beside the sink. I pulled out a single sheet of paper I had printed that afternoon. I placed it in front of her. Supplementary card cancellation notice, dated November 18th, signed by me, notarized the same day, delivered to the bank by courier. "Modern money," I said, "has rules. I followed them. You ignored them." She stared at the paper. Her shoulders began to tremble. I continued, voice never rising. "The cards were supplementary, linked to my primary account. I removed the link months ago when the first unusual charge appeared. $23,000 at a private jet charter service. You never asked me if I wanted to fly anywhere." Vanessa sank into the chair now, the fight drained from her posture. "Mom, please, just reinstate the cards." "We'll be more careful, I swear." I remained standing. "Careful," I echoed. "Like the way you were careful when you listed my house for sale without telling me?" She looked up. Mascara streaked one cheek. "This is revenge. Pure revenge." I shook my head once. Revenge would feel good. This feels like balance. The landline rang in the hallway. I did not move to answer it. The machine picked up after the fourth ring. Vanessa's own voice played on the outgoing message, the one she had recorded last Christmas when she still called me every Sunday. "Vanessa, it's Derek. The condo association just called. Something about an eviction notice. Call me back." The machine beeped and went silent. Vanessa's head snapped toward the sound. "Eviction? That's our vacation condo, the one in Kennebunkport." I walked to the counter and poured myself a glass of water. The ice clinked softly. I took one sip, set the glass down. "That condo," I said, "is still in my name. Richard bought it in 2014. I never transferred title. You and Derek used it, paid the maintenance for my accounts, but the deed never changed." She stood up so fast the chair scraped backward. "You're evicting us? From our own place?" I met her eyes. "Not me. The association. They received a notice today from Whitaker and Associates. Unpaid maintenance fees for 31 months. $47,000. I stopped the automatic withdrawals in December, right after I cancelled the cards." Vanessa's face went white. "You can't do this." I tilted my head. "The paperwork says I can." The doorbell rang at exactly 8:47 p.m. 2 sharp notes. Professional. Impersonal. Vanessa froze. I walked past her to the front door. I opened it without hesitation. A process server in a dark jacket stood on the porch. Rain glistened on his shoulders. He held a thick envelope. "Vanessa Voss Klein?" he asked. She appeared behind me, breath shallow. He extended the envelope. "You've been served. Eviction proceedings for the property at 14 Ocean View Lane, Kennebunkport, Maine. Court date in 30 days. Vanessa took the envelope with numb fingers. The server nodded once, turned, and walked back into the night. I closed the door. The house fell quiet again, except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Vanessa clutched the envelope to her chest. Her voice came out small. "You're destroying us." I looked at her for a long moment, not with triumph, not with pity, just the same steady calm I had carried since Sunday brunch. "No," I said, "you did that when you forged my name." She backed up one step, then another. Her heels clicked against the hardwood. At the doorway, she stopped. "We'll fight this. All of it." I nodded once. "You can try." She left without closing the door behind her. The night air drifted in, cool and damp. I walked back to the kitchen. The platinum card still lay on the counter. I picked it up, carried it to the shredder, and fed it in slowly. The machine growled once, then stopped. I opened the contingency file to a fresh page. Time, 8:51 p.m. Vanessa confronted. Platinum card declined. Eviction notice delivered. I capped the pen. The house felt lighter somehow. Not joyful, just balanced. I whispered to the empty kitchen. Perfect. Outside, a car door slammed. Tires spun on the wet driveway. The next domino was already falling, and the numbers kept perfect time. The doorbell rang at 7:03 p.m. the following evening. 3 sharp notes. I knew who it was before I reached the foyer. I had left the porch light on, not as welcome, as warning. I opened the door. All 3 of them stood there in the cool April air. Vanessa in a black coat, eyes swollen but jaw set. Marcus beside her, tie crooked, hair uncombed. Derek at the back, briefcase in hand, face tight with the kind of anger that comes from losing control. "Mom," Vanessa said. "We're done asking nicely." I stepped aside. They walked in without another word. We moved to the living room, the same room where they had once opened presents under the tree, the same room where they had tried to bury me with brochures 4 days earlier. I sat in the wing-back chair by the fireplace. They took the sofa and the 2 armchairs opposite me like a tribunal. Derek placed his briefcase on the coffee table and snapped it open. He removed a fresh set of documents, thicker this time. He slid them across to me. "Sign," he said. "All 3 copies. It fixes everything. New trust, full release of the audit. The house stays in the family. The cards get reinstated. The eviction notice disappears. Simple." I looked at the top page. Revocation of 2019 trust. Appointment of new trustees. Mental capacity affirmation. My name was already typed in every signature block. Marcus leaned forward. "We've talked to a new attorney. He says if you fight this, it goes to a competency hearing. Public record, doctors, reporters. Your name dragged through every senior services blog in Boston. Do you want that?" Vanessa's voice cracked, but stayed hard. "Sign, Mom. We're still your children. This doesn't have to end ugly." I let the silence stretch. 10 full seconds. The clock on the mantel ticked louder than usual. Then I stood up. I walked to the sideboard where 7 plain manila folders waited in a neat stack, each one labeled in my own handwriting with a single date and a single word. I carried them back to the coffee table and placed them down one by one, like laying out cards in a game they had already lost. Folder 1, Sunday brunch. Folder 2, forged signature. Folder 3, house listing. Folder 4, $340,000. Folder 5, buyout offer. Folder 6, platinum card. Folder 7, eviction notice. I sat down again. My hands rested flat on my knees. "You want me to sign?" I said. The sentence came out longer than any I had spoken to them in years. "You want me to fix what you broke. You want me to pretend the last 6 days never happened, but I have spent 42 years keeping perfect records. And these 7 folders contain every single mistake you made." Marcus reached for folder 4. I did not stop him. He opened it. Bank statements, highlighted transfers, the compliance officer's preliminary report already stamped Elder Financial Exploitation, Active Investigation. Vanessa's eyes darted to folder 6. She opened it with shaking fingers. The card cancellation notice, the $9,400 dinner receipt, the internal bank memo confirming the supplementary cards had been severed on November 18th. Derek stared at folder 7, the eviction paperwork, the 31 months of unpaid maintenance, the letter from Whitaker and Associates demanding immediate payment or court action. None of them spoke. I continued, voice low and steady. "You forged my name on a Sunday morning while I chose flowers. You listed my house for sale without my consent. You tried to move $340,000 with a single click. You offered me $2.1 million to disappear from my own life. You canceled my dignity, one platinum card at a time. You served an eviction notice on the condo your father bought for family summers. 7 times. 7 exact moments where you chose money over me. I leaned forward slightly, not angry, just clear. And every single time you did it, you triggered the clauses I wrote in 2019, the ones you never bothered to read. Derek's face had gone pale. This is blackmail. I shook my head once. No, this is consequence. The bank audit is now with federal regulators. The title company has frozen the house listing. The IRS has received notice on the $208,000 in gifts still inside the statute of limitations. And the competency petition you filed yesterday morning was rejected at 10:14 a.m. today. 2 independent physicians. 30-day notice delivered to Whitaker. You missed every requirement. Vanessa whispered, "How?" I looked at her. Because I prepared. While you were busy deciding I was too old to matter, I was making sure the paperwork would speak when I no longer wanted to. Marcus slammed folder 4 shut.
We'll fight this in court. We'll drag it out for years. I allowed the smallest pause. The doorbell rang again. 1 single measured note. I stood up and walked to the front door. I opened it without hesitation. Mr. Whitaker stood on the porch in a dark overcoat. Beside him was the lead attorney the children had hired 3 months earlier. The one they had bragged about. The one whose firm they had paid $42,000 to draft the new trust. Mr. Whitaker nodded once to me. Then he looked past me into the living room. The lead attorney stepped forward. His face was ashen. He did not look at my children. "Mr. Klein, Ms. Voss Klein, Mr. Voss," he said. His voice carried across the room like a verdict. "I am withdrawing from your representation effective immediately. A clear conflict of interest has come to light. I have known Eleanor Voss since 2004. I notarized her original revocable trust in 2019. I was not aware of that connection when you retained my firm. I am now, and the evidence you have generated is overwhelming." He placed a single sheet on the table beside the 7 folders. "Conflict of interest letter, signed, filed with the court this afternoon. Your new trust documents are now invalid. The competency petition is dismissed. The audit will proceed without my involvement." Derek stood up fast. "You can't do this." "We paid you." The attorney looked at him without blinking. "You paid me to represent competent adults acting in good faith, not to facilitate elder financial exploitation. I have a duty to report what I have seen. Good evening." He turned and walked out. Mr. Whitaker followed, pausing only long enough to meet my eyes. "Call if you need anything further, Eleanor," he said quietly. Then he closed the door behind them. The living room fell silent, except for the mantel clock. I remained standing. I looked at each of them in turn. Vanessa's tears had dried into streaks. Marcus's hands hung limp at his sides. Derek's shoulders had lost their confident line. I spoke one last time, longer than 3 sentences, longer than I had allowed myself in years. "You came here tonight to make me sign away my life. Instead, the universe simply let your own hands pull the final thread. 7 times you tried to erase me. 7 times the paperwork you ignored came back to balance the scales. I never raised my voice. I never had to. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. Cold night air rushed in. "Leave," I said. They stood, slowly, like people waking from a dream they could not escape. Vanessa passed me first. She did not look at me. Marcus followed, eyes on the floor. Derek stopped at the threshold. He opened his mouth, closed it, then walked out without another word. I closed the door. The lock clicked into place with a soft, final sound. I returned to the living room. The 7 folders still sat on the coffee table, like 7 small tombstones.
I gathered them neatly and carried them back to the sideboard. I placed them in order. Then I whispered to the empty room.
Perfect. The clock struck 8. Outside, car doors slammed, engines started, tires rolled down the driveway for what I knew would be the last time. The universe had not sent lightning. It had simply waited for them to finish the job themselves. And now, the scales sat perfectly balanced. I sat back down in the wingback chair. For the first time in 6 days, I closed my eyes and let the quiet settle over me like a heavy, welcome blanket. The days after the living room confrontation blurred into a quiet rhythm of paperwork and silence. I sat at the kitchen table each morning with the same mug of black tea, the contingency file now closed and placed to one side like a finished chapter. The clock above the sink ticked past 8, then 9, then 10. I watched the numbers arrive one by one, delivered not by anger, but by the slow, inevitable machinery the children had set in motion themselves. At 9:47 a.m. on the first morning, my phone buzzed once. A text from Marcus. No greeting, just a screenshot of an email from his lead investor. Due diligence uncovered frozen accounts and pending federal inquiry. Round terminated. Wire returning $340,000 minus fees. I read it once, deleted it. The startup he had bragged about for 18 months died with a single line of text. No shouting, no courtroom. Just investors who suddenly remembered how to read bank statements. I took another sip of tea. The liquid was still hot, perfect temperature. By noon, the landline rang. Vanessa's voice on the machine, high and brittle. "Mom, my license. The real estate board just suspended it. Temporary. Pending elder abuse investigation. They said the bank filed a report yesterday. Call me." I let the message play out. I did not pick up. The board had acted on the same compliance notice I had triggered 6 days earlier. Her 6-figure commissions, her carefully curated listings, her platinum lifestyle, all paused by a single flag on a spreadsheet. She had listed my house without consent. Now her own name sat flagged in the state database. I stood up, rinsed the mug, and set it in the drying rack. No triumph in my steps, only the steady click of routine. Derek's turn came at 2:14 p.m. A courier in a dark uniform rang the doorbell. He handed me a plain envelope marked Confidential, Hedge Fund Partners. Inside was not addressed to me. It was a forwarded copy of an internal memo the partners had sent Derek that morning. Regulatory inquiries received regarding potential commingled family assets and elder financial matters. Effective immediately, we are placing your portfolio under review and reducing exposure. Your draw reduced to 0 until cleared. I read the final line twice. The fund that had once valued him at 8 figures now treated him like a liability. Quiet inquiries from regulators. No drama, just a polite distance that would cost him his corner office and his parking spot within 30 days. I carried the memo to the kitchen table and added it to the file. Page 23. No emotion, just another number in the ledger. The afternoon stretched long and quiet. I sat with a fresh cup of tea and watched the light shift across the hydrangeas outside the window. No phone calls from me. No texts. I had not spoken to any of them since the night they left. The universe did not need my voice. It simply let their own greed finish the sentence they had started. At 4:03 p.m., another buzz. Marcus again. This time, a longer message. The compliance officer called. They want a full interview next week. The $340,000 is now officially under DOJ review. Investors pulled out. I'm done. I read it without blinking. The boy who had once asked me for $20 for ice cream now faced federal paperwork that would follow him for years. He had tried to move money on a Sunday afternoon. The system he mocked as old paperwork had remembered every keystroke. Vanessa's next call came at 5:27 p.m. She left no message this time, just the sound of her breathing before the machine cut off. Her license suspension notice had arrived by email.
30 days minimum. Clients already canceling appointments. The luxury listings she had used to impress buyers now carried her flagged name. She had tried to evict me from my own life. The association had simply mirrored the paperwork back at her vacation condo. Derek sent nothing. But at 6:12 p.m., the hedge fund memo was followed by a second envelope, this one from his managing partner. Partnership vote scheduled. Your continued presence under investigation creates risk. We suggest voluntary leave. I placed it beside the others. The man who had once explained smart money to me across this very table now faced partners who no longer wanted his name on the letterhead. I sipped the last of the tea. It had gone lukewarm. I did not mind. The kitchen felt larger somehow. The weight I had carried for decades had begun to lift, not with fanfare, but with the soft rustle of envelopes and the click of delete buttons. At 7:38 p.m., the doorbell rang one final time. I opened the door. A different courier this time. Older man, neat uniform. He held a thick, official-looking packet sealed with the stamp of the Massachusetts Probate and Family Court. "Eleanor Margaret Voss?" he asked. I nodded. He handed me the packet. "Personal service, court order. Have a good evening, ma'am." I closed the door, carried the packet to the kitchen table, sat down under the warm overhead light. I opened the flap slowly. The paper inside was crisp, heavy stock, the kind used for decisions that cannot be undone. I read the first page. Order granting relief. In re Voss Family Trust. The 2019 revocable trust executed by Eleanor Margaret Voss is hereby confirmed as the sole governing instrument. All subsequent attempts to amend, revoke, or transfer trusteeship are declared null and void. The temporary hold on all assets is lifted. Title to the colonial house at 142 Maplewood Drive is restored exclusively to Eleanor Margaret Voss. The listing for sale is cancelled. All redirected pension deposits and annuity payments shall resume immediately to the original accounts. I turned to the second page. Signatures. Stamps. The judge's name in bold black ink. Whitaker and Associates listed as counsel of record. The house was no longer for sale. The $4.7 million sat untouched. The $18,400 pension would hit my account on the 1st of next month, exactly as it always had. I read the final paragraph twice. Any further petitions regarding capacity or control shall require dual independent medical certification and 30-day notice to the original firm. Failure to comply will result in sanctions and legal fees assessed against the petitioners. I closed the packet. No smile crossed my face. No victory fist. I simply sat there with the court order resting under my fingertips and felt the deep, cold peace of something finally balanced. The phone stayed silent. Outside, the hydrangeas swayed once in the evening breeze. I whispered to the quiet kitchen. Perfect. The final domino had fallen. Every asset returned to my sole control. The house stood exactly where it had always stood, and the children who had tried to erase me now faced the quiet wreckage of their own signatures. I stood up, carried the court order to the study, and placed it in the safe beside the 2019 trust. The metal door clicked shut with the soft finality of a period at the end of a long sentence. Tomorrow would be 6 months since Richard died. I would walk the garden he planted and sit on the bench he built. But tonight, I simply turned off the kitchen light and let the darkness settle around me like an old friend. The scales had never been more even. 6 months had passed since the evening I closed the front door on all 3 of them. The colonial house sat quiet again. No slammed cabinets, no urgent texts at midnight, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft tick of the hallway clock. I had spent those months in silence, meeting Mr. Whitaker 3 times in his downtown office. We restructured everything. New revocable trust, layered LLC protections, Updated beneficiary clauses that named only the charities I had chosen years ago. No loopholes, no supplementary cards, no joint accounts. The $4.7 million sat exactly where it belonged, guarded by clauses even their new attorneys could not touch. I woke each morning at the same hour, made black tea in the same mug, and reviewed the statements that now arrived only in my name. Pension deposit, $18,400 on the first of every month. Annuity, $940. House taxes paid from the primary account without a single question. The numbers behaved because I had made them behave. One Tuesday afternoon, the phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A single text from Vanessa. "Mom, can we talk? Just coffee, no lawyers. I miss you." I read the words once. The screen glowed soft blue in the late light. I tapped delete. The message vanished. No reply, no ellipsis, no second chance. I set the phone down and walked to the back door. The garden waited. Richard had planted every hydrangea by hand the year before he died. They bloomed heavy now, blue and full, heads bowed under their own weight. I stepped onto the stone path. My shoes made no sound on the moss. The air smelled of damp earth and cut grass. I moved slowly past the rosebed he had tended every Saturday, past the small fountain that still trickled because I paid the service myself. At the far end stood the wooden bench he built from reclaimed oak. I stopped in front of it, ran my fingers over the armrest where his hand had rested so many evenings. I sat down. The bench creaked once, familiar. I looked out across the yard that was still mine. No for sale sign, no moving trucks. No glossy brochures promising assisted living with bridge on Tuesdays. Just the house, the garden, and the quiet I had earned back one forged signature at a time. 7 times the universe had clocked in and done the job itself. 7 times they had pulled the threads with their own hands. The first time at Sunday brunch when they slid the envelope across the mahogany table and told me everything was already moved. The forged signature stared back at me like a stranger's lie. The second time when Marcus stood in the study and tried to explain $340,000 as family support while the compliance officer waited on the line. The third time when Vanessa and Derek brought the mental incompetence petition in the Lexington brochures. Certain 2 doctors and 30 days were details I would never notice. The fourth time when Marcus stormed into the kitchen demanding answers and the bank froze the wire in real time. The fifth time when Derek placed the $2.1 million buyout offer on the table and his attorney read the statute of limitations still ticking on $208,000 in gifts. The sixth time when Vanessa's platinum card declined at a $9,400 dinner and the process server arrived at her door with the eviction notice for the Kennebunkport condo. The seventh time when all 3 stood in the living room with their new documents and Mr. Whitaker walked in beside the attorney they had paid $42,000 to betray me. 7 precise moments, 7 exact triggers. I had never raised my voice. I had never cried in front of them. I had simply kept the records, filed the clauses, and waited for their own greed to finish the sentence they started. I sat on the bench and felt the deep, cold peace settle into my bones. Not joy. Joy would have required forgiveness. This was something cleaner. The satisfaction of a ledger finally balanced. The relief of no longer carrying 3 adults who had only ever seen me as a walking balance sheet. The hydrangeas swayed once in the breeze. A single petal drifted down and landed on the stone path. I watched it settle. No one called my name from the house. No urgent footsteps crossed the foyer. The garden belonged to me again, the way the numbers did, the way the house did, the way my life finally did. I never asked the universe to step in. I just made sure that when it did, the scales were already perfectly balanced. I stood up slowly, brushed a speck of pollen from my sleeve, walked back toward the house through the late light. The back door stood open exactly as I had left it. I stepped inside, poured the last of the tea, and sat at the kitchen table. The phone stayed dark on the counter. No new messages, no more attempts. I took a slow sip. The tea was perfect. If you have ever sat across a table from people who saw you only as money, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. And if these quiet stories of balance matter to you, like this video and subscribe. There is always another ledger waiting to be settled. The clock ticked once. I set the mug down and smiled, very small, at the empty room. Perfect.